Hello and welcome back to another update on the Israeli-Palestinian war, where we go on with the latest developments throughout the front line in this conflict as we check out what is happening and the current situation. So we start out with the territorial changes that happened in the Khan Yunis area here on the 15th of January, 10 days ago. We saw that the Israeli forces managed to make some advancements here to the north of the Jarara area, here in the northern parts of Khan Yunis in central Gaza. We also saw the Israelis expand their zone of control here to the southeast of the Khan Yunis area. So we're seeing that there are some developments in the Khan Yunis area where the Israeli forces are trying to capture more positions that are under the control of the Hamas forces. We're finding it's going a lot back and forth, with the Israelis trying to make some advancements and the Hamas fighters trying to hold them back. The fighting has changed a lot here in the Khan Yunis direction. The main reason for that is that the Israelis have completely changed their approach to how they are fighting this. This is due to multiple reasons. First off, they have learned from these over 100 days of fighting that has taken place, and based on that they have made some changes. We see in this video here, which shows Israeli tanks in a convoy as they drive through the parts here in the Khan Yunis direction, and we see from this footage there are soldiers on top of the tanks. They also have these cages that block UAVs or other smaller drones from dropping grenades or simply smashing down into the tanks. We have the bulldozer behind them to clear if there's anything, and there's one in the front. They also have a bit of distance between some of these tanks, allowing them to advance and move around according to what is needed. So all of these are things that have changed and things that the Israeli army has adapted to. The main part and the most important one for the Israelis is the fact that there are soldiers on top of these tanks. Although these soldiers are vulnerable to Hamas fire, if the Hamas infantry try to shoot at them, then they are vulnerable. But the most important part is that the tank itself is much safer with this change. We have seen tons of footage before which shows Hamas soldiers simply standing right next to the tank and putting some sort of IED on the tank before walking away, running away, and hitting it with an RPG. This allows for a complete destruction of the tank, but could easily be avoidable if there's a soldier on top of the tank. Sure, now this soldier can be shot at, but the difference between a soldier getting shot at and a tank blowing up, killing the entire crew, is huge. There's a huge difference. And we also see that if a Israeli soldier was shot on top of the tank, then the tank would know that there is enemy activity in the area. Therefore, this is a huge advantage. Although it will cause more casualties of the infantry, it will save a lot more with the limited destruction of tanks. Something else to note is also that the Israelis now use a lot more infantry compared to the start. At the start, they would rush through the areas simply with tanks, and then the infantry would follow up and look through the buildings. Now the strategy has changed to them using a combined attack of infantry and tanks. This is similar to a change that happened in the Russo-Ukrainian war, where the Russians started out only with tanks and then switched to infantry-based assaults. The reason for that is that neither side will waste a lot of ammunition on simply a few infantry soldiers walking through the front line, but also the fact that this is simply much more effective in clearing areas. Although that would increase, again, the infantry casualties, but it would also significantly decrease the tank casualties. Especially in urban war, it is very important to make use of infantry because the visibility of tanks is very limited, and in urban war where there's already limited visibility, it makes it that much more difficult for tanks to detect enemy soldiers. As such, the Hamas fighters had a lot of success in the northern Gaza Strip, where they managed to take down a lot of Israeli tanks, but here in the south they are facing more difficulties as the Israelis have adapted. We also see that instead of simply going through these buildings and clearing them, they now simply demolish them if there has been some sort of Hamas activity within it. Therefore, we see this footage here, which shows a large building being completely demolished here in the Gaza Strip. And the reason for that is that we have previously seen Hamas videos from that exact building shooting at Israeli tanks. But not only in the Khan Yunis area, we also saw some advancements of the Israelis in the central parts of the Gaza Strip over the first few days here by the 15th of January. So we saw some advancements by the Israelis in a northern direction, as well as in a western direction here to the south of that, and finally by the river line. So we saw the Israelis moving in multiple directions in multiple parts, which shows that the Israelis are not simply fighting in one area at a time, but spreading the fight out all throughout the central and southern parts of the Gaza Strip. So this all happened on the 15th of January. As for the 20th of January, we then again saw more advancements in the Khan Yunis area and in the Jarrah direction here to the south of it now instead of the northern parts. We also saw some small advancements here in the direction of the northwest of Khan Yunis, and finally further advancements in the southwestern and southeastern parts of Khan Yunis. So with all of these advancements, we saw that the Israelis again spreading out the fighting to as many places as possible while continuing the fight to try and get full control over the Gaza Strip and get rid of Hamas within it. This is why we're seeing a lot of fighting, and the fighting is actually also expanding back into the northern parts by the Gaza city itself. We've seen that the Israelis re-entered this area here in the northwestern parts of the Gaza city, and this is likely due to a re-emergence of Hamas activity in the northern Gaza Strip. The reason for that is that the Hamas fighters still have tunnels underneath all of the Gaza Strip. Therefore, even if the Israelis completely clear a part of the Gaza Strip, the Hamas fighters can simply re-enter the area and reoccupy positions in that area. This is why I did not understand that the Israelis almost completely withdrew from Gaza City, because Hamas could simply re-enter these positions. They could easily just have gone under the tunnels, waited until Israel left, and then re-emerged. And that is likely what we saw here in the northwestern parts of the Gaza Strip, some Hamas positions reopening and re-emerging, and as such we saw the Israelis re-enter. So it seems that rather than a complete withdrawal, they simply put them at the side, ready for any possible fighting taking place in the area. So as such, we see that there is still some Hamas presence in the northern Gaza Strip, although the Israeli army claims that it is completely cleared. Finally, in the Khan Yunis area on the 23rd of January, the Israeli army moved in a northern direction, going around the residential buildings and moved to the open areas, where we see further Israeli advancements and fighting taking place now in the northern outskirts of Khan Yunis. And with this, we see that it is entering yet a new stage of the fighting in Khan Yunis, where the Israelis are looking to gain full control over the city, as well as the Jarrah area, which despite its small size likely has a large concentration of Hamas fighters, and this is why the fighting is taking so long. At the same time, we also see that the US government has told the Israelis to kind of tone down the destruction and the casualties taking place in the Gaza Strip, and as such that has also slowed down the time it takes for the Israelis to move forward. So we're seeing that the Israelis is having a difficult time finishing this in a very quick sense, and that is considering that the fighting has now taken over 100 days and they have yet to take fighting to the Rafah area. The main reason for that is that the majority of the Palestinians have moved to the Rafah direction, as no fighting is taking place there. There's only a few airstrikes here and there. However, with a very large concentration of civilian refugees, that makes it very difficult for the civilian population in the Rafah, but it also makes it easier for the aid to arrive. However, there has been some demonstration of Israelis by the border crossing from Israel into Gaza to prevent aid from going through, which makes it, again, very difficult for such a large concentration of civilian refugees in one area to survive, which makes the civilian situation in Gaza very, very difficult as long as this war goes on. And that is the current situation in the Gaza Strip, and that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.